we went over the first part of the morning. Okay, our next presentation is regulated materials and waste, and we have Jeff Nice with us, who's with the Office of Environmental Stewardship. And he's going to go over some of the blasting and some of the things that we had. Steve talked about some of this, but this is goes beyond the painting, gets into some of the asbestos and things like that. So with that, Jeff, I don't even remember how many years you have with MnDOT. You can give your explanation.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, my name is Jeff Nice. I am with the Office of Environmental Stewardship out of Central Office, MnDOT. Been with MnDOT for just about 8 years. Prior to that, I spent almost 20 in environmental consulting. So prior to coming here, I did a ton of bridge inspections and site remediation and all of that type of thing. So yeah, again, here to talk about managing regulated materials, regulated waste on bridge projects. So if you have any questions, you can either save it to the end or raise your hand. We can kind of tackle them as we go. Small group for regulated materials. There's 4 of us. We break the state down by district or by area. Any one of us can help you out if you're ever in a pinch with regulated asbestos, that type of stuff. You can definitely reach out to your primary contact, and then certainly give you a hand. Again, summer. I don't know how many of you, what familiarity you have with MnDOT, but summer has pretty much the northern part of the states. Vicki has central and southwest. Rachel has southeast, and then I manage Metro East, and then also supervise the unit. So everything I talk about today is going to be on our website. There, I don't know if the link is active in your electronic materials, but if it's not, the easiest way that I find this site is I just go out to Google and type in MnDOT regulated materials, and it's one of the first ones that comes up. So if you have stuff and you're looking at it, you print stuff off, that's fine, but we do update this. Stuff does change over time, so you're going to want to keep going back. I would say after about a year, if you have some old documents, check them, make sure that they look like what we did, because we do try to keep it up, and things do change over time. So anytime we're dealing with bridge paint, especially if it's got PCBs or lead content, we're going to want to take just-in-time training. That's something that our office provides. Ideally, we can have a couple of months' notice to get a group together, but that would be for you guys, project engineers, any contractors. We can't force the contractors to come, but it's helpful that they attend. It's a short, I can do it in a job trailer, or we can also do it online. Not very long, less than an hour. I think it's like 45 minutes that we generally kind of go through all of the high-level stuff as we're into getting closer to a project that we need to know as far as managing our materials, managing our paperwork. And not only on MnDOT projects, but again, like it says up there, state aid projects as well. So why are we here? We are a government agency, even though MnDOT logo, everything else looks similar to the PCA or the Department of Health. We are a government body, and so we need to follow all of the environmental regulations. The other thing is internal MnDOT does, when projects hit a certain dollar threshold, which I'm sure many of these bridge projects far exceed those, they do review our projects, and so we want to make sure that all our I's are crossed and T's are dotted. So we are regulated, so we need to make sure that we're maintaining all of our environmental guidelines. So again, these are kind of some of the things that we're governed by: air quality, solid waste rules, hazardous waste rules. The bottom 2 are the big ones, but air quality is good. Air emissions is something that we're constantly trying to keep an eye on, making sure that we're not releasing anything, even if it's dust. We have to have 0 visible emissions is what we're held to. So, recyclable abrasives. Unless we have engineer's approval, we cannot use blast docks. There are certain circumstances that we're allowed to do it, but we have made the decision several years ago to primarily go with recyclable abrasive steel grit. The big reason why is when we use blast docks, the amount of waste that's generated is like 4 times at least. So when we can recycle, we can recycle out that steel shot and the steel grit, we can save on our waste volumes. Why is that important? For a particular job, you know, what does that equate to? Money, right? Okay, it's going to cost maybe $1 million to dispose of waste. If we did it with blast docks, you know, we could probably only spend $30,000 if we did it with the recyclable grit. On a lot of these bridge projects, $1 million isn't a big deal. But from a MnDOT perspective, that $1 million worth of waste on all of our projects, on all the projects that we do throughout the department, that's a huge liability, because the way MnDOT views our waste is we're beholden to it. And if a landfill goes under and they need to do remediation and they look through the records and they say, oh, MnDOT dumped a bunch of waste in here. There's cleanup to do, guess who gets to pay? MnDOT, which means who gets to pay? All of us taxpayers. So that's the big thing, that the big underlying theme that we're going with, and what really drives what we do is it's an environmental liability. So PCBs, we want to make sure that any of our bridges that are older than 1980 bridge paint, and that's not only the top coat, but that's the primers. We want to make sure that we're looking for PCBs. If it contains greater than 50 parts per million of total PCB by weight, it's considered hazardous. And in order to determine if it's got PCBs, we need to do a lab test. I'll get into it in a minute, but with lead, we can actually have someone with the Niton go out and do a field test with the Niton instrument. But with PCBs, we can't do that field test. We need to actually have an actual sample. Here, lead paint, again, 0.5%, 5,000 parts per million by weight. We can do it in the laboratory, but we also have the Niton. I'm sure there's other XRF type field instruments that we can do it. The other way we can determine lead content is historical records. If we've got this good historical records, we can save a little bit of money on the test, but we actually, MnDOT has a testing unit internally based out of the Fort that can do our sampling and determine lead content. So, paint removal, we want to make sure we're properly curtained. You know, we want to have side coverings with a 3-foot overlap, ground coverings, 30-foot lateral on the ground. We want to make sure all our storm drains are covered. And we also require daily cleanup. So I know the last thing we want to do, especially, you know, when we're going to make another mess tomorrow, but we need to make sure that we're cleaning up as we go, because if we don't, it just compounds. And so we want to make sure that our storm drains are covered. As Paul had alluded to on St. Croix, there's lots of eyes watching. You'd be surprised at the amount of educated observers out there in public. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to contain our emissions. So we do that by providing water, negative air pressure, and then again, daily cleanup. That's kind of the key, is making sure we're cleaning our houses. Photo's getting older and older, but it is a good photo. It's something that we don't want to see. We don't want to see this visible emission. That machine, we should somehow have created that curtaining so that it totally encompasses that machine, so we don't have an outlet for air emissions. So when we are dealing with our waste, we need to make sure that we do the correct testing, this TCLP, toxicity characteristic leaching potential. What that is it basically simulates a landfill condition. So I don't know if you're familiar with landfills. Basically it's a big bathtub or a big burrito. And what happens is, you know, deposit waste, they try to cover it up in a timely manner. If it rains, snows, whatever, you're going to have moisture moving through the material. It all gets collected and then containerized, or at least, you know, segregated in a leachate pond or a leachate tank. We want to try and simulate that in the lab so that we know when we're sending waste to a facility, they know what to expect, and they're going to want that T-clip test. That helps determine how we classify that waste. Is it hazardous or is it non-hazardous? That's what we're going to need to require. I'll get into it in a minute, but we'll need to have that for the project file, and then we'll also need to submit that to characterize the waste at the landfill. So if it is non-lead or non-PCB, it still is considered industrial waste, which is considered regulated. The biggest thing that take away from that is MnDOT does not allow our waste to go to demolition landfills. Reason why, again, a little primer on landfills, you have demo landfills, which are basically unlined. You have regulated industrial, mixed municipal, hazardous waste. All of those are lined landfills. So when we're storing non-lead, non-PCB, we want to make sure we're storing it in proper containers. We want to make sure we have our test results indicating that. We want to make sure we're tracking how much waste. When it's non-lead or non-PCB, we do allow temporary off-site storage. I know most every construction job site, whether it's the size of a house or residential property or multi-thousand acres or multi-acre sites, there's never enough room. So we do allow, if it's non-lead or non-PCB, non-hazardous, we can allow for temporary off-site storage. We still have to maintain and document site conditions on a regular basis. But we want to make sure that, if it is hazardous or, of concern, we do require that it stays on site. But we are willing to work, and that's something that we can work with the project engineer, project manager on the front end. And then again, we want to make sure that our disposal end site, we're keeping track of records for them and for us. What are those records? Those are the lead and the PCB determination. That basically comes out of the test results indicating that it's non-hazardous. We want to make sure that we're tracking all of our waste. We have waste tracking forms on our website. I think I'll get into that in one of the next slides. And then we want to make sure that we're manifesting everything correctly. And then through that process, what we require the project to do, and we will hound project managers on them, is after we send a load to Waste Management or WM, or if we send it to SKB, we require that after 30 days, that manifest documented that we sent that load gets sent back to us with the third signature, the landfill acknowledging that they received it. So it is kind of a rolling thing. It's tedious, but it is a federal requirement that we make sure that we're documenting that the landfill did receive the waste in the condition that we sent it. So any waste that is managed as a hazardous waste, if it's lead or PCB containing, if it's removed and it's above those lead hazardous levels, we need to treat it as such. We need to label it on site, and we need to make sure that when it goes off site, it's characterized correctly. Anytime we're dealing with bridge projects that are greater than 500 square feet, we need to notify our neighbors, whether that's residences, businesses, whatever. We do have a letter on our website that basically you pull it down. It's a very good template. You fill that out. We just want to let the public know what we're doing. I mean, they know, but it's kind of a courtesy notification to them to just say, hey, this is what we have. This is the type of circumstances we're working with. So we're fully acknowledging that we're managing our risk. It's more just a full disclosure. It's a good neighborhood thing to do. So when we have hazardous level materials that we're taking off of our bridges, we want to obtain a temporary or one-time EPA ID. That's typically done by your project engineer. Basically, it's just going into the MPCA system, getting a number, a tracking number that the feds generate, and then that way it tracks all of that waste under that header. If the project is going greater than a year, we need to have an annual ID. We need to do weekly inspections. We want to make sure that we're keeping track of things, and that weekly inspection needs to be conducted by MnDOT staff. You cannot contract that to contractors. So we want to make sure that our paperwork, our hazardous waste manifests, our land disposal restriction forms are done. And then that waste tracking form. We want to just, it's, with the way MnDOT views hazardous waste, especially, it's a cradle to grave thing. So even though once we generate it, it's always ours. It goes to the landfill, we're just renting space. If it ever gets dug up, we're gonna have to deal with it. So it's one of those things that we're very serious about tracking. If we don't do this correctly, project managers, project engineers, maybe some inspectors will hear from us. Containers got to be DOT specs. They have to be approved metal drum, properly labeled. We got to be in a secured storage area. What does secured mean? I've seen everything from, you know, concrete stored inside. I've seen it stored in dog kennels. A lot of times they'll bring out a dog kennel. As long as we can demonstrate that it's secure, you know, that fulfills the obligation. Once containers are full, we need to, we have a limited time which we can handle them. They can only stay on site for a certain amount of time. We don't want to have drums out either. And then also, the one thing I didn't say is we want to always keep the lids on our drums, except when we're adding waste. So we don't want to have a full day go with the, you know, drum lid laying on the ground, because is it a big deal once it's taken off of a bridge? Probably not, but it's an optic thing. We do have some less restrictive methods if we're using hand tools or scraping or power tools and not your typical larger scale operations. We are less restrictive on that. Vacuum systems, power tools. Again, we still have to treat it in the same manner, but our containment is a little bit less. If we can do smaller focused area type things, we are less restrictive, or the regulations are less restricted for those types of things. That's the end of this portion. I got two more little sections. Do we have any questions on anything I've done so far? Yeah.
With the waste, so what is the final process? Is there a final process to this waste?
So basically what it is, we take it off a bridge, it goes in a dumpster, it goes in a drum. Ahead of time, we should have prepared the paperwork with the landfill. Typically, there's an approval process. Basically, it's a one-page sheet of paper, sometimes a two-page, has all of the waste. I should probably get a picture of the waste manifest on there. But it just says, what is the waste? It's got the proper waste codes. What's the type of container? How many containers? That type of thing. Hauled to the landfill. Depending on what it is, PCBs, if it's that, sometimes it needs to get incinerated. Oftentimes, at least in Minnesota, it's buried. The other thing I will say is too, if it's hazardous, MnDOT, or the state of Minnesota, doesn't have any hazardous waste landfills within our borders. We end up having to ship it off, typically to Wisconsin, sometimes parts further. The other thing too is we do require, MnDOT policy is that all of our waste stays within the borders of Minnesota. We do have a couple of landfills in La Crosse and in Winter where we will allow our waste to go. The reason why is Minnesota has a high standard of quality for a landfill. There's 30-year post-closure requirements for Minnesota landfills, which basically means that if the landfill goes out of business, we still have to monitor the groundwater and the site conditions for 30 years. The state of North Dakota doesn't have that. About 5-6 years ago, I got a call from a project manager. I don't know how or why he called, but he said, yeah, we just did this bridge paint project. We generated 5 barrels up in far northwestern Minnesota. He said, we sent it to this landfill in North Dakota. And I said, great, you got to get it back. He's like, what do you mean? And I said, all of our waste has to stay here. Unless you get permission, we can't send it out. North Dakota, South Dakota, they just don't have as restrictive of post-closure or landfill regulations that Minnesota does. So we just have made that determination that we're going to keep it here because we are very concerned about our footprint, or it's a liability thing. So getting back to what happens is, yeah, it usually gets buried. If it is hazardous, they have to deal with it. Sometimes they burn it, incinerate it, that type of thing. So depending on what happens, the type of waste, that's typically what we do. We send waste. I know, like I said, most of ours goes to Somewhere in Wisconsin, we have had to send it further, just depending on what it is. But yeah, so usually it gets stuck in a hole in the ground and then wrapped up. I like to think of them, I did a lot of landfill work before I came here, and really most landfills are basically a big burrito. We're just wrapping it up and containerizing it so that we're not letting it out in the environment. So, moving on, asbestos, big deal. Again, all of our information, we have quite an extensive website out there. Again, we are regulated by those organizations when it comes to asbestos: Department of Health, Department of PCA, and US DOT for hazardous materials. So asbestos, I'm sure all of you have heard of asbestos. How many people think we can still use it in the US? Right answer. We no longer produce it, but we still allow import of asbestos-containing materials. So that's important. We run into it in a lot of our building projects where they say, oh, well, we quit using asbestos years ago. We still have asbestos in brakes. We still have asbestos. You know, it's a great material. It's a mineral. It's strong. I'll get into more of the characteristics later, but I just want to stress it's still element. The most common one is the chrysotile, and then we have amosite, crucidolite, and there's about 3 or 4 other types that are less common. This is under, I don't know what the magnification is, but this is naturally occurring, high magnification. This is the stuff that you saw in old movies like Holiday Inn, White Christmas, all this is the stuff that they made the snow come out of. They made the artificial snow for the movies. This is 90 to 90% of the asbestos that we see in the U.S., but there are others. It's also the easiest to deal with. When we deal with asbestos, we have to make sure that we don't have any visible emissions or any emissions in any way. So a lot of times when you wet it, you use like a surfactant, like a soap, amended water. This type of asbestos actually takes and interacts with that water the best. The other two don't really work with the water, amended water that much. But brown asbestos, amosite, and then your crucidolite. That's the blue stuff. Like I said, it's mined, it's a mineral. This was, I believe this was the Libby mine in Libby, Montana. I think it was the 80s that their operation shut down, but we no longer produce it because we can get it a lot cheaper elsewhere. These are the top 3 producers, and I know my dad is old, but I want to stress that the U.S. still imports. What's also funny is there are other countries, third world countries that have banned it. So the big deal is it's an economically feasible. It's a great product to use. So we haven't found anything better that does. I mean, pound for pound, I don't know. Yeah, here's why it's still used. It's not affected by heat and chemicals. It doesn't conduct electricity. A lot of times you used to see it. They used to make transite panels, put them behind electrical panels for insulation. It's stronger than steel. Can be woven into cloth-like materials. A lot of times welding gloves where we had asbestos fibers in them because they protected your hands. Very durable. And it's cheap. So we haven't found a lot of materials that can do the same thing, so we still find it feasible to continue to use it. So again, we can import it. It's a world trade thing, so we want to make sure that we're just aware of what we're doing because it's a concerning mineral because it can cause lots of disease. None of these are pleasant, but it's one of those, if you take proper precautions, follow the guidelines, you can generally protect yourself pretty well, protect the public. So we typically require a year's notice when we're doing a bridge demolition. We'll hire a contractor to go out there, test a bridge. The thing that's nice about asbestos is it doesn't go anywhere in building materials. So once we identify it, We look at a bridge and then 20 years later, we're doing other modifications. That bridge report that we generated, that assessment that we generated is still good. Like I said, about a year ahead of time, we'll get notice of bridge work. We'll assess the whole bridge, document not only what materials are contain asbestos, but what contains PCBs, lead, all of those other types of regulated materials, which I'll get into later. These are all of the other things. Number one is asbestos, PCBs, lead plates, electrical components, anything with a circuit board we're concerned about. We're moving a lot of stuff to LEDs on our bridge lighting, so we want to make sure that we're capturing that materials too. The LEDs are great, but they still have a circuit board, so we're still concerned. Mercury and lead paints. And where can asbestos be found? We've seen it in joint compounds, we've seen it in gaskets. Pipe insulation is probably one of the most common. Transite pipe, waterproofing, and electrical putties. We don't see much in electrical putties, but we have found it. Here's just some joint compounds. This is where things kind of flex on the bridges, you know, sealants, that type of stuff. We have tested it and found it there. Gaskets, you know, between bridge deck and bridge support. Anytime things are moving around, it's good to test those materials because they do have asbestos. Again, why is it in there? It's a durability thing. Pipe insulation, we've seen these under bridges, behind bridge abutments, that type of thing. We do require, I think it's the next one, waterproofing. We do require our contractors to do coring. If they look at the structure inventory reports, they see waterproofing or they see, you know, have them look at bridge plans. Anytime on a bridge plan it says it has AV on there, we have them on alert to take a look at those areas. As you probably are aware, sometimes we have bridge plans that say things that either aren't there or we find things that aren't on the bridge plan. So that's why it's important that we get our bridges assessed in a timely manner so that it saves you guys some headaches in the field. That's not to say that, you know, sometimes we can't always see everything behind bridge abutments or in conduits or duct banks or whatever. But we do make every effort to go out there, do digging, do coring, and try and find out what we're going to deal with. Here's one of the more common areas that we see asbestos piping, asbestos coatings. This transite. Transite's a trade name, but I think just about every transite pipe that I've sampled has had some asbestos content. And so we've often made the call case by case, but if we have projects where we start regularly seeing the words transite, we just assume that it contains. The nice thing about doing that is it is more expensive to dispose of asbestos containing waste. However, when you look at, if we just make some assumptions and say, yep, if we have those words on it, we're going to consider it asbestos, it saves time. It saves, you know, excavators sitting there, it saves people time. So we have made, in a lot of cases, just assumptions that, you know, you can always assume it's contained. You can't assume that it doesn't. You have to prove that it doesn't. But that's often where we see that. We see those going under bridge abutments a lot. Electrical putties, we don't see it a lot in there, but we do have to call it out because we have seen it there before. Anytime we run into something that we don't know or is suspect, give us a call. We do have contractors that will come out within 24 hours, visit the site, collect a sample. We don't always have results within 24 hours, but our contractors are pretty good. If they can get it to the lab and we need it, we can generally have a sample to determine within 24 to 48 hours. But anytime there's a concern or you see something that is like that, you have to say something. Let us know, we can get out there. Big thing, anytime we're dealing with asbestos, we have to have certified contractors. That's not a MnDOT thing, that's an EPA, Department of Health thing. For oversight, we regulated materials in OES, we contract the assessments, and we contract the oversight contractor. The general, we ask that the general contract the abatements contractor. The reason why is then the general still controls time, they can still control the schedule. we have to have somebody out there working with them, but our contractors are really good about coordinating with all of our pre-qualified pavement contractors. That was one thing that I don't know if I mentioned there, but all of our contractors that we use for environmentally related things have to be on our pre-qualified list. Our unit goes through and we have 5 or 6 different pre-qualification work types, we call them. And we vet and work with all of our contractors, make sure they have adequate experience, adequate staff, and all of the right certifications. So again, even though we require oversight, we ask that the general, because they have the Rolodex of the right people anyways, and then they can control when things are happening. We wouldn't be put in a position where we're holding up schedule. So that's kind of the reasoning for the split duty there. So anytime we're doing an asbestos demolition, asbestos abatement, we have to notify the Department of Health. And we're pretty firm on getting those certifications. It's a lot easier now, or notifications. It's a lot easier now that we have email. We can send an email. We have to have some documentation that we did send that, CC ourselves, copy ourselves on that email. There are certain timelines that we have to follow if we're doing bridge demolitions that have asbestos involved. We have typically it's a 10-day notification. That's 10 working days. That doesn't necessarily include weekends. So we got to have a little bit of forethought about what we're doing. Depending on the type, whether it's regulated, a regulated quantity or not, or whether it's just a demolition, or if it's a demolition that involves asbestos, we have to notify both. Fortunately, they've created one form. So it's just a matter of you fill out the same form whether you're dealing with asbestos or just demoing the structure. And it tells you who to notify. But it's one form. I believe it's a fill it out, and I think there's a submit tab on the bottom of the form, electronic submit tab. We still want to keep a copy of that, so once you fill it out, save the PDF, and then get it to us so that we can keep it in the file. But the big thing there is no work starts until we have received that the notification is sent in a timely fashion. So jumping back into PCBs, we've seen it in caulking and bituminous felts. Bit felt is where that's been one of the struggles that we found lately because it's so hard. Sometimes bridge plans say that there's bit felt in there. It's hard to get to when we're doing our assessments. But we typically look for, at least in caulking, we look for PCBs in anything that we mentioned that prior to 1980. We will look at it even after that. I think 1982 is when we kind of said if it's 1982 or older, we'll look for it. Mainly because, like anything, they phase out a product, but there's still materials out in the wild that are still being used. So we kind of look at it that way. Again, your thresholds are the 50 parts per million. That's typically an analysis. So again, this just is a refresher on lead paint. I think I've already talked to that. If we have lead paint on structures and it's intact and we're not removing it, we're demoing it. We just need to let the lead or the steel recycler know that A, there's presence of lead, and B, the lead content or the concentration. They can take it, they can manage it, but we just need to let them know that it's on it. Anytime we're dealing with peeling paint, it's got to be encapsulated. We don't want to have, even if it's latex paint or non-lead containing paint, it's an optic thing. We don't want to have the flaking. We don't want to have that falling on the ground, on the water. We understand that it happens, but we want to manage it as efficiently and as responsibly as we can. Lead plates. They need to be separated. Paper trail, that's going to come up, I think, on these next several slides, is we want to track everything that we have. Got to have a paper trail because that's how we retain our liability. That's how we demonstrate to our regulators that we're doing the right thing. Treated wood, oftentimes treated wood doesn't need to go to the landfill. We find uses, there might be a county or a private party that says, hey, I can use that. We can't chip it, we can't burn it, But what we can do is if we have an interested party, we have a transfer of ownership form that basically says, hey, Joe Schmo from the neighboring, county wants to use this material for whatever. Fill out a form, he or she acknowledges that they're receiving it, that they're gonna deal with it in the proper way or not misuse it. It's a great way to recycle our materials. If we aren't doing that, going that route, we have to send it to a permitted landfill, again, sanitary, industrial, municipal.
Jeff, can you tell them where that form is found?
Yeah, that form is on our website as well. I don't know if we have a link to that. But yeah, that transfer of ownership form, I may have it in a subsequent slide here, but that again also is on our website. We actually have them for all the different types of waste, and then we have a general one too. So if you need that, if you can't find it, just let us know, we can dig it out for you.
So see, you have guardrail there, so say a contractor is replacing guardrail and putting in steel posts with the polymer backing, whatever, and they take ownership of those treated posts, is that their deal then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of follows under, that's, becomes, I think contractually it's called waste becomes property of the contractor or something. The expectation there is that they're gonna manage it correctly.
Okay.
The next couple of slides are where we, just kind of demonstration of other regulated waste, message boards, LED lamps. Anything that is a circuit board, there's a lot of good stuff in here that we need to make sure that we're covering. Lamps, the trend is that we're going to more LEDs. Does that mean that someday myself and Vicki may not have a job? Maybe. There will always be other things to manage, but the nice thing is we're going away from some of these more, lose my words here, the materials that have some of the harsher chemicals in them by going to LEDs, but we still need to make sure that the ones we have go to improve recycling. Ballast PCBs can not only be found in paint and caulking, but it can be found in ballast, can be found in transformers and capacitors. I know when I used to do a bunch of property condition assessments, I know in the transformers, they have started going to non-PCB containing insulators in transformers. Usually put a nice purple sticker that says no PCBs. If we don't have that, we have to assume that it has PCBs in it. So, what do we do with all this documentation? Well, we start with the assessment report. The next phase is when we go to remove it. We have to document where all this stuff is. That's the tipping receipts, that's the manifest, and that's the general recycling receipts. If we have an oversight contractor, or if we have asbestos, the oversight contractor works with the abatement contractor. They get the daily sign-in, the work logs, the MDH certifications, notifications, disposal facility information there. And then basically the last thing is, making sure we collect all our paperwork. I know it's a pain, but it's how we document, again, that we're doing the right thing. This gets into the transfer of ownership. We have steel beams with lead paint, and someone can use them, or we can send them to the steel recycler. We just need to make sure that we're transferring the ownership correctly. Lead plates are the same way. Treated wood. It's a one-page form that has some legal jargon on top, and it basically just says we've got 144 sticks of treated timbers or whatever. MnDOT signs it as relinquishing ownership, and then the interested party signs it on the other side. We need to make sure that we're keeping track of that stuff. And it can be as simple as filling it out. If you only have the one sheet of paper in the field, take a picture, email. Photos of that stuff is acceptable as well. We just need to have something with full signatures on it. This is just a reminder that anytime we're working on or adjacent to tribal properties that we need to communicate with them. Usually that's done way on the front end, we do know that, but just something to keep in the back of your head that, hey, did we notify, or are we letting our tribal partners know that we're doing it? We've established a good relationship, we've done things to hurt that relationship, but we're always in a process of trying to maintain that. Any other questions? All right, one more short one. Number of our sites, we have projects where we have concrete that, foundations, footings that are so deep that it would move us if it's and it's in a condition where it would just create a big detriment to the traveling public. It would create an ecosystem issue where we'd be, potentially altering the stream bed. If we have clean concrete and we have certain conditions, we can actually leave it in place. We've worked out an understanding or agreement with the Pollution Control Agency that under certain circumstances, if the concrete is clean, we can oftentimes leave it in place. The one thing that oftentimes project managers will come, well, it's just too expensive. That doesn't fly. We need to have something beyond that. It has to be, oftentimes, an example of this would be up in Elk River. There was a private company that had a processing plant up there. They had a huge water intake. Went right under Old 10 there going into Elk River. They reached out to us and the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers, and said, hey, if we take this out, we have to basically close down this roadway for a very long time. All the concrete was documented as clean, and so that we worked with them, and the Fish and Wildlife or Corps of Engineers said, yeah, that seems reasonable, so we actually left it in place. We have to demonstrate it's clean though. If there's any staining, any impacts to the material, we have to find a way to get it out. But our options, like I said, when we have concrete, we can reuse it, recycle it. We can leave it in place if we have if there's an engineering need. Say we have a footing right next to a hospital, a deep footing that we no longer have use for it, but if we were to take that out, we would compromise the structural integrity of the foundation of the adjacent structure. We can put that into writing and document it, and that would be an acceptable way or acceptable reason. A lot of this stuff is probably managed before you folks would get in touch with it, but where you would come involved is we would need to demonstrate that it's clean, and that we don't test. It's more of a subjective. There's no staining on that concrete just looks wet, or it looks, it doesn't look impacted. The other thing is documenting what we're leaving. That's one of the requirements for our agreement, is that we have red line documents. If we can get GPS locations of what was left and what depth and all of that type of stuff, that's where you folks might come involved. Is we're leaving this set, this piece of concrete, or these, columns or piers or whatever. Can you document that A, it's clean, and B, that we're cutting it off where the plans say that we are? And if we're not doing that, make that adjustment, let us know, and we can work around it. Again, we have down at the bottom here, we have the guidance document or the website. One of there's a flow chart on here that's really hard to read up here, but if you pull it up on your computer, it's a lot better. The other option is disposal. If we can get rid of it, rubble, if it doesn't have a use on site and we can't recycle it and we determine that we can't leave it in place, we haul it off. Again, here's how we can reuse it. We can turn it into riprap. If we can use it in the road core as backfill structurally, if it's structurally sound, base material for new pavement. We want to recycle this stuff as much as we can. The one caveat that I don't have on here, because we don't have it fully inspected yet, but what we're working to is establishing some sort of baseline. If we're going to leave this concrete, we have found that if we put it in areas that are perennially wet, i.e. culvert bedding, i.e. just the edge drains where it's going to be wet, it will actually leave, it changes the pH of water. We've seen pH as high as like 12, which is really and not good for the environment. It also leaves like a cloudy, think of, I don't know, most of you probably remember what it looks like, but it's a cloudy kind of film in the water, and that's not, we have gotten calls from the public about why is this water so cloudy, it shouldn't be. So we want to make sure we're working towards a happy medium that we can, that everybody can agree to, that we want to keep this recycled concrete material out of areas that are perennially wet. We're not there yet, but hopefully soon. Again, if we leave it in place, we have to demonstrate an engineering need, we have to demonstrate, or we have to demonstrate that if we were to take it out, there would be a negative impact. And so we have to follow all of these. These are the guidances that we have out on the website. It's a little bit easier if you just go dig it out yourself. But like I said, a lot of this stuff is handled before you folks touch it. But you want to be aware that it is out there so that if we have these projects where we're leaving concrete in place, just to double check to make sure that we've done our due diligence and we're following what we said we're going to do. Again, engineering needs, we can use it as a road core, aggregate, slope stability, riprap. I've seen it used all over the place. And if we do that, we just fill out a form. Our office works real closely with the project folks to get that done. Again, here are if a negative impact, if it's going to cause a massive detour, if it's going to become a detriment to motorist safety, uneven settlement, if we can demonstrate those things, we have the ability to leave it in place. Everything that we do, documents that we create, we're going to have to save into eDocs, making sure that we use the right keywords, uncontaminated concrete. It's good to keep it in permanent record, but we want to be able to find it. The agreement that we have is something kind of nice with the MPCA that we've established that this is what we're going to do. We've built enough trust with them. They always have the right to say, hey, in Ramsey County, in the last 10 years, how many uncontaminated concrete projects have you had? We have to be able to go back and say, okay, these 10 SPs, we left concrete in place. They're usually fine with it, they want to be able to have access to it. So if we go down a route where we have to leave it, and if you can't demonstrate those other two, let me go back here. Yeah, we can't demonstrate that there's a negative impact or that there's an engineering need. Essentially, we can leave it in place, but it becomes an in-place landfill. All kinds of permitting. We've never had it happen, but that is kind of the last condition that we had to work out, the last concession with this agreement that basically said, if we can't demonstrate, if cost is strictly the only reason we're leaving that material, then essentially we built an MnDOT landfill, which we don't want to do. But if it does need to happen, there's a bunch of paperwork. We can get through it, and it can happen, but we would need to file a lot of paperwork. We need to pay yearly fees, county, solid waste fees, all of that. Like I said, we don't want to do it, but it's there if we need it. Again, this is the flow chart. Really hard to see. It's at that website. We'll help the project folks through it. But again, just wanted to make you all aware that this is out there so that we might have projects where we're leaving a big footing. You're looking at it going, why are we not taking that out? Well, there are reasons. So, and it's the onus or the expectation or the help that you guys will provide would be documenting that it does look clean and that we're leaving what we said we were going to leave. If it's contaminated, if it's stained with paint or oil or whatever, it's got to come out. So all of that wind that I had before, it's got to be clean. If it's contaminated, we don't have a choice. We got to pull it out. And that's it. Any other questions? Great. If you have any, walk out of here at the end of the day, month down the road, say, hey, we ran into asbestos, we got this paint, we got these lights, what do we do? Again, just go to our website. It's on, for those of you with MnDOT, it's on iHub. Just go to Environmental Stewardship Regulated Materials. Like I said, I like to go to Google, MnDOT Regulated Materials. Our stuff will pop up right up there. Good contacts page on there. You can reach any one of us. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff. Any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
What do we do if we have cooperative projects with, say, North Dakota or Canada or Wisconsin? As far as, do we usually go with whoever's more restrictive, or?
We have, good question. TPI up in Duluth is one of those cases. I know the what is it, the Osceola Bridge in Osceola, just over the river north of Stillwater there. We work with them. I know with TPI, there's an agreement between the two DOTs. I think it's my understanding, don't quote me, don't hang me on this, but I believe for TPI, MnDOT is taking the lead on, you know, we've kind of drawn a line and, you know, MnDOT will do inspections, and then as far as managing waste, each DOT is going to handle their own. I know Wisconsin has significantly more restrictive conditions on funding. Change orders over there, actually, I heard a rumor that change orders have to be approved by the legislature, which makes for a big timing issue. So there's probably some cost sharing and so forth. Those are generally done by a case-by-case basis. I know I've been in meetings since I manage Metro East on the Osceola Bridge, that we meet with them, Wisconsin folks, all monthly to make sure that we're staying on time. As far as getting down to the details, you know, our environmental restrictions or our environmental regulations are pretty similar. If there's a case, yeah, we'll just defer to the most restrictive. But most of the time, I mean, our counterpart, Shar, over there is real good. We have a good relationship, I know, with Wisconsin and Iowa as far as from a regulated perspective. We don't have as much with North Dakota, South Dakota, but you know, we're all like-minded. They all have folks like us in their DOTs. So, and then in cooperative projects like county projects, we do a lot of those projects come in ahead of time, similar to how our projects come through, state projects come through. We generally make comment if they want to do certain things on state aid type stuff. We just say, our general response is MnDOT views, or if MnDOT were doing this project, this is how we would handle it. So we can't require, we have limitations on how much we can require they do on like cooperative construction stuff. So it's kind of a case-by-case thing. So, but yeah, any other questions?